organizations are rethinking how they secure their cloud environments. Today, we'll show how Microsoft Defender for Cloud uses AI-powered features to tackle evolving threats, and we will discuss new innovations like AI security posture management and AI threat protection, and learn how these tools can strengthen your security, simplify operations, and future-proof your cloud environments. With me today is Karsten Du, who's our Chief Enterprise Architect, Managing Architect for our Azure and Endpoint teams here at Planet Technologies. Karsten specializes in cloud architecture and security and helps organizations modernize and secure their environments with the Microsoft security solutions across Microsoft 365 and Azure. You may remember Karsten from previous YouAlreadyOwnIt sessions, and most recently the XDR and Sentinel, a roadmap to unified security operations this past July. Also with me is Andrew Sloan, who's our cloud strategist here at Planet, and Andrew will join in on the conversation today, and we'll be monitoring chat in case you have questions. So please put your questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring them. Welcome both, gentlemen. All right. For more information about today's program, make sure you check out our blog on this topic that was released and that we posted this week on our website. We'll also include some useful links at the end of this presentation, so definitely check that out. So let's go ahead and get started. So on the agenda today, first, we're going to go have an overview of Defender for the Cloud. Then we'll get into the threat landscape versus how Microsoft handles these threats using Defender capabilities. Then we'll get into some of the core capabilities of Defender for Cloud, like cloud security posture management, DevOps integration, cloud workload protection. And then we'll get into some AI-powered capabilities that are now in Defender for Cloud, followed by other new capabilities that came to the product in the last 6 months. And of course, we'll leave plenty of time for questions. As always, we like to start off with an anonymous poll. So we'd love to know what your biggest challenge is in protecting cloud assets today. Is it that you have a multi-cloud complexity and get lots of tools sprawl? I've heard the average organization has over 10 security products to try to manage this. Is it a lack of unified visibility in asset and inventory? Is it compliance and evidence, skill resources, AI-related risk? We just love to hear what your background is on these topics. And again, this is all anonymous, so please put your questions in the chat window. We'll go over them at the end of the session. So let's go ahead and get started. Karsten, can you give us a high-level overview of Defender for Cloud and go ahead and get this conversation started?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ken.
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone. So we are going to talk a little bit about Defender for Cloud and how it fits in the overall landscape of security protection in your Microsoft tenants. So with Defender for Cloud, what this is a very high level view, of course, on unify your DevOps, security management, strengthen and manage the overall security posture, and the workload protection. All of these are sort of separate entities when it comes to Defender for Cloud. And for those of you who have used Security Center that became Defender for Cloud, it might be worthwhile take a look back at what your settings are, what you have turned on, because it has expanded a lot over the especially last year. So you can move on here, Ken.
Yeah.
So this slide, very busy, of course. I like
one of your favorites, though, right, Karsten?
It is one of my favorites. I can talk about this for a very long time.
I know you can.
The purpose of this slide is really to cover what Microsoft is doing from a security perspective when you are a Microsoft tenant customer, right? Be Office 365, be Azure workloads. But let's not forget about endpoints. Let's not forget about on-prem environments and servers or other clouds. It's all included in the security stack. And of course, we are focusing on Defender for Cloud here. What makes this special, what Microsoft is doing, what makes that special is that all these tools complement each other. They integrate and they share telemetry. So if you go to the next slide, Ken. Yeah. This is a much easier slide. But But the story from this slide is the Graph Security API. This is the information highway that all tenants have, and this is where security telemetry can be shared between the tools, between agents, between log sources, in various ways. And this is what makes the Microsoft security stack quite unique. There are other tools, other third-party tools that can integrate with here, with the Graph Security API. One example might be Splunk, if that's used in an on-prem fashion. Splunk can connect to this API and leverage the signals. So there are flexibility, but this is the integration aspect of the Microsoft telemetry as it relates to your tenant. Yeah. So diving a little bit deeper from the first slide, you'll see the various areas of protection. There is, of course, a compute layer of Defender for Cloud protection, the service layer, database and storage layer, the remote workloads such as AWS and GCP, and on-prem workload. We've had great success with many customers starting onboarding servers from on-prem into Defender for Cloud using what's called Arc. It's an agent that makes the server now manageable from Defender for Cloud. I think the conversation very comes up in the workload protection aspect of a server. There might be another agent, there might be old MDE agents and old MDE licensing in play that triggers this conversation, because once we onboard a server via Arc to Defender for Cloud, MDE, for example, is an extension that we install from Defender for Cloud.
MDE being Microsoft Defender for Endpoint.
Sorry, yes.
For those that aren't familiar.
Yeah, so that would be your anti-malware EDR. Yeah.
Okay.
So since we had planned to have a little demo in this presentation today that I won't be able to make, I want to mention something in the breadth of talking about the endpoint protection of a server. It's one of the things that is very often overlooked. When you start using Defender for Cloud and you onboard on-premise servers, maybe for the purpose of Defender for Endpoint, is that once we do that, now the server is manageable in the Defender portal. For those of you that may know about this, one important aspect of Defender for Endpoint is to be able to control the attack surface. So MDE, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, has attack surface rules that we can use to make the security posture of that endpoint, be server or not, a much stronger attack surface. And so from the onboarding to Defender for Cloud via Arc, I now get the ability of managing this using the Defender portal. It's very often overlooked, and it's a shift in how you manage this, but it's a huge advantage for you to be able to control how this Defender for Endpoint actually works on your servers. So it's a huge improvement. I think you can forward.
Okay.
All right. So one of the things that is new, and it actually doesn't come from Microsoft. I think this actually came originally from Gartner. Is a new level of protection, which is called CNAPP, Cloud Native Application Protection Platform. And with that, Gartner defined something that goes beyond the traditional workload protection and the cloud security posture management. Now, as you see here on this list, the security posture management and cloud workload protection, they are both native capabilities of Defender for Cloud. So a little note about the CSPM, or the Cloud Security Posture Management, is that this is something that needs to be enabled. It surfaced, I think, about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer. But most customers that I worked with since, they are not aware of this being a service that we actually can enable. It adds a layer of protection. It adds a layer of visibility. As you will see later in this presentation, it adds a lot of capabilities under the hood that you don't have to manage, or that there are other services now at play behind the scenes that helps bringing a larger protective blanket, to use a silly word, for your environment. Now, the cloud workload protection is what everyone that ever used Security Center and Defender for Cloud is familiar with. You turn on Defender for Cloud, you enable protection of servers, for example, in your Azure environment. They automatically get onboarded with a management agent called AMA, and then the Defender for Endpoint extension automatically is enabled as well. So again, note to everyone listening here, if you're using Defender for Cloud, make sure you check out your environment settings, make sure your workloads and the workload protection is turned on, but also check out the CSPM enablement as well. There is two types of CSPM protection for Defender for Cloud. One is called foundational, and the other one is the full protection. And the full protection comes at a pay-as-you-go additional cost. Yeah.
But the foundational is free of charge if they just want to make sure they turn it on, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just to recap here, CNAPP is a new term. Gartner pushed it out there, and it's really to be able to classify these vendors, the security tool vendors, in a new, more cloud-focused or cloud-complete category. You can move on. All right, so we put a little bit of fancy graphic out here to show what the CNAPP is all about. And as you see, it now covers everything. You see the mention of agents here. We'll go back into the more detail and what's actually happening under the hood here. But as you see, the top left corner here, Defender CSPM and Foundational CSPM, those are the two flavors I just mentioned. The foundational one is free. It's with Defender. I do not think it's enabled by default, so that is something that you need to take a look at in your environment. Of course, the servers is the workload protection. The same is for the containers, the resource manager, API, Key Vault, databases, and app services and storage. All right. So CNAPP and Cloud Posture Management compared, so side by side. The scope is, of course, important. So what CNAPP is trying to encapsulate is the full existence of your environment from cradle to grave. So that's where you see the posture itself, so the environment posture, all the workloads, and then including the pipeline. A lot of customers are using DevOps or Git to orchestrate or develop and or deploy their environments, which is now included with the full CSPM. Then you get that to that CNAPP level. And of course, that CNAPP will then include, as I said, everything from development to deployment, but also the runtime. The capabilities now include the infrastructure as code scanning and the CI/CD integration, so your deployment pipelines, right? Threat protection is full runtime for all of this, including Git, including repositories, including DevOps. So you can actually have a live scanning and live security posture around new code emerging and coming into the system. And then, as you see, the last bullet here goes without saying, but we have the DevSecOps integration. Before CNAPP, that was minimal, and you could look at some of your pipelines and you can scan the code, but it was not built in and it was not fully integrated. All right. So this is where we're gonna start looking at. So we introduced this as being what's happening with AI and Defender for Cloud. And there is a lot of AI components being used in this framework. And as you see here, if I go into identity analysis, right, there is a machine learning component. Again, we are sharing signals with Graph, the Graph Security API, and because of that, there is correlation happening. The vulnerabilities. There is machine learning when it comes to vulnerabilities. So the vulnerability scanning results are being evaluated based on a machine learning ability. And this has nothing to do with the actually detection of it. It's more about the prioritization and helps end users and customers to see what vulnerabilities do I need to focus on. As you all know, you run workload, especially server workloads with operating systems. The list of vulnerability is going to be very long, very cumbersome to curb. So getting that insight from the machine learning sources is where we get the value add from that. The last one I'm going to mention here is the zero-day detection patterns. Again, pattern machine learning. Again, it's based on graph. It's based on signals. And what you will see in the tenant, and it was in that large overview slide I had earlier, is that everything is gathered and shared on the Graph API, and then our correlation engines are working on the signals, looking at all the signals as they relate to all the other signals. So that makes the detection of any threat, including 0 days, very effective. Now, one more thing I'm going to mention here, it doesn't appear anywhere on the other slides here, is that using the Microsoft security model actually includes getting knowledge and experience also from outside of Microsoft, because Microsoft is working with the other top security vendors, if you wish, out in the market. So they certainly share, if there is new threats coming along, they share these signals. So there is a entire little marketplace out there for these things. It's a big business model out there. Right,
Great point, Carson. So, yeah, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat window, or certainly raise your hand. We're happy to do it either way, orally or through the chat interface. Yep. Great point there, Carson.
All right. So the workload protection that most of us are familiar with from Defender for Cloud. This is where we turn on the server protection. It's also using AI under the hood here. To pick out the host or the VMs, it's behavioral type of machine learning. This is where the ML engine is looking at a signal, a connection, a result, a file access, an execution, and whatnot. And from machine learning, understand what is the impact of doing these things. So it sees telemetry, it sees signals, it will have a knowledge base, or in real time calculate, okay, this isn't good. I need to do something about this, and that can, at least on the surface or from a default behavior, be I'm going to alert my SOC operators about this. Again, a mention here for those of you that are using Microsoft tenants and you have your Defender portal, Defender portal would be security.microsoft.us or .com. You will find that if you go to alerts or incidents in threat analytics there, that you will by default see signals from Defender for Cloud if you have enabled Defender for Cloud. And that is a part of what Microsoft is doing with unified security. They are putting the signals in that direction. And what you will also need to hear or understand about that is the correlation engine in the Defender portal. So underneath it all, this is where things are correlated. You might say, well, wait a minute, I'm using Sentinel. I'm sending my Defender for Cloud signals to Sentinel. Well, that's fine, and that's going to still do the same correlation. Signals are still going to be available on Graph API, so they are still shared. So even if you move away from Sentinel and go into the Defender portal, the signals are still correlated in the similar fashion there. The two different correlation engines, but the same value of the alert or event correlation is true for both places. We can move on then.
No question, Jeff, but I got one for you. So just a reminder, right? These workloads could be on-prem, they could be in Azure, they could be in AWS or GCP, right?
Yeah.
Or a combination of both, as long as you
this,
target those specifically, yeah.
This is true for things I can graph onboard. I can also onboard, for example, AWS and AWS subscription. It's not the right word. Account. AWS account. I can onboard a AWS account and I can get the security telemetry from AWS and ingest into this environment. And this becomes, in my mind, critical if I have workloads in AWS that somehow interact with the workload I have running somewhere else, on-prem or in Azure. I want to be able to correlate across these platforms.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Let's talk about DevSecOps.
Yeah, DevSecOps. So this is like the new big brother in Defender for Cloud. There's a lot of ability here. Of course, it's dependent whether or not you're using DevSecOps and it's integrated with your Azure environment. But for those that do, there are some very, very strong, very useful capabilities here. Code scanning goes without further mention. It was one of our issues, of course, when we worked in environments that had CI/CD and code came in, but there was nowhere and no integrated scanning of the code itself. And that has been completed. It's been around for a while, and it's fully functional and it's integrated, as I said, with Defender for Cloud and DevOps or Git, or there's a lot of other pipeline tools out there that is covered by that. Infrastructure as code, if I use DevOps again, Bicep, for example, I get full scanning, not only of the code, but also of the runtime itself. If I do something with Bicep, if I execute a deployment, it's being scanned and validated in real time. As some of the other slides here, you see the bottom one, the compliance checks. We don't have any AI for that. I would be very surprised if that's not something surfacing soon. And I think CMMC is a driver for it. This is my personal opinion.
Sure.
I haven't seen anything on Ignite about this yet. And the reason I'm saying that is compliance is such a large theoretical area where with, sometimes hundreds of controls with, thousands of lines of code and controls that we need to relate to, makes it very hard for a human to follow these controls and make sure or even understand what they mean and what's required from an environment, to meet these controls. Now, Defender for Cloud still helps you, and It was one of the things I wanted to show you in my demo, but so here's where I'm going to break the news. The Defender for Cloud, if you don't give it something to look through, in other words, if you don't provide optics, Defender for Cloud becomes really dumb.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is when we start Defender for Cloud and its default setting, it's using what's called the Microsoft Security Benchmark, which is a collection of policies. Now, Defender for Cloud has a job. It has a job to look at everything it can find, and it looks through that lens of rules to determine what is the posture of this. So that's on a very deep level how Defender for Cloud works. Now, the reason I mentioned that for the compliance checks is that I can apply compliance framework policies, for example, CMMC or HIPAA or NIST or CGIS. I can apply that to my environment, and I can use Defender for Cloud to show me what is my compliance posture. And this is one of the strongest area because it's so hard to navigate and look at a server, a network card, its settings versus maybe 17 controls in a compliance framework.
Yeah.
So Defender for Cloud gives you a framework to manage that. Yeah. Let's move forward, Ken.
Yeah.
All right. So to summarize, the AI use in the Defender for Cloud environment. Because of all the sharing, because of the Graph Security API, because of its integration, it can look at all of these things. And if we pick a couple over here, behavioral threat detection. This is usually something that we accomplished using, a combination of SOC operators and multiple tools. We got certain events, and we got certain events in a timeline. We got certain events happening outside of normal hours. Now the flag is getting more and more red, right? This is all automated by now, and you will find that the ability of recognizing threats from behavior is it's outside of, I want to say, human capabilities, unless you're superhuman. So yeah, so this is where the artificial intelligence is certainly helping us. Another mention here, predictive risk scoring is a very strong measure. We get a predictive risk scoring from artifacts from things that we are protecting based on vulnerabilities, based on configuration, based on how it's being used and how it's being accessed. We can get a predictive risk scoring that tells us something about, is this artifact or is this system or even this platform at risk for something. And this is where CNAPP now comes back into play, because now you're looking at everything at once, right? And this is all pulled together in Defender for Cloud. I want to mention one more here, I think, Ken, because this kind of feeds into something we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So the cross-signal correlation, it sounds like I've been talking about that all the time, but the cross-signal correlation, where now, because we're using Graph Security API, I can have an event that starts with an email that is received, that is open, with a file saved, with a file being moved and stored to SharePoint, downloaded to a server, and all of a sudden there is an execution. And this cross-signal correlation can see all of this. It will be able to pull all of this together, and once it starts pulling these events together, it becomes very certain in saying, okay, here is an incident, this is a problem, this should not be happening. And when you go there and you start looking at it, you will see this completely laid out. Hang on one second. You will see this completely laid out, both in, of course, verbiage, but also in mapping, where it's very obvious for the SOC operator that what is happening, how it's happening, and you will also find recommendations for remediation. And I think that's a good pivot into the little call out here for the Ignite announcement.
Yeah.
Yeah, Microsoft just announced that they are going to roll out the security copilot into all tenants that have E5 licensing. And the reason I mention this in the breadth of correlation or in any detection is that Security Copilot now will sit there and it will have insight and access to your security telemetry. So I can look into both security telemetry. I can also look at configuration. I can measure configuration drift as an example. But this announcement is, in my mind, really big. We've been playing, of course, with Security Copilot, also as a relate to Defender for Cloud, for a while in a standalone deployment, as you may or may not know. But again, this is now being deployed by Microsoft into tenants where E5 licensing is in place. They will let you know 30 days before they deploy this and before they enable this. So you will have time to prepare. You can also disable it, actually. I would not recommend that because it comes to your tenant with security compute units already allocated. And that is a calculation based on how many seats you have. So the only number I know so far is that if you have a tenant with 1,000 E5 licenses, you will receive 400 security compute units per month. And if you've played with Security Copilot and you've been buying SCUs, they're called, you will quickly understand that this is a really good deal.
It's a huge value. Yeah, a huge
a,
value for E5
yeah,
customers.
it's a huge value. Yeah.
Because I think
All
the
right.
last time you did this, the talk on Security Copilot, just 3 CSUs were like $9,000 a month or something.
Yep.
Yeah, so now they're going to give you 400 roughly for 1,000 users to start taking like off the top of the credit. Yeah.
Yep. It takes a little bit getting used to understand how they are consumed. I burned some SEUs by just looking at the incidents.
Yeah.
So it takes some getting used to, but Microsoft has promised they will share much more about the impact of what you do versus the SEUs, right? Now, what I think is important is you get these 400 SEUs. They are yours to use. They do not roll over, so you better use them
Right.
before the month is gone. But if you run out of them, if you build process that consumes, let's say 500, when you exhaust the 400, you can buy additional ones. I think they priced them. This is hearsay. $6 per SEU. So we'll come back to that to see how that pans out. But to my understanding, this is a much better deal than what the standalone Security Copilot offering was all about.
And it's providing more value after E5 licenses for folks that are considering moving to E5 or actually have E5. It's just a lot more value that you're getting out of that license. So that's awesome news. Yeah, more to come on that. We're going to be doing an Ignite show, a night announcement show, and all the announcements we're going to go over in December. So definitely come back again in December for hearing a little bit more about some of these announcements from Ignite. Excellent. All right, let's talk about some of the other recently new things, like in the last 6 months or so, right? Talk about some of the new things from Defender for Cloud that are now available to the users if they haven't looked recently.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one I kind of mentioned a little bit. I talked a little bit about Sentinel. Is that Microsoft already have started the work of migrating Sentinel and enable it into the Defender portal. So again, the security.microsoft.us or .com, based on what platform you're on. So they are bringing to life what they've been talking about with a unified security or unified view on your security and threat protection posture, I want to call it. So I think the only thing I want to add to that is that Sentinel is not going away per se. Sentinel is still going to be there. It's still going to serve a purpose, and especially if you are in a compliance environment situation where you, for example, have a log retention requirement. That's where Sentinel is very much going to be alive under the hood or in Azure, right? Um, because the Defender portal does not yet, I don't know if this will come, but I will be surprised if it doesn't. Um, Defender portal does not yet have a way of configure retention. So for logs, like say activity logs or identity logs, they are available there for 180 days. And after that, or anything more than that, you will have to send or connect your log sources with Sentinel and its log analytics, so you can retain the logs for a longer period of time. The multi-cloud AI posture management. So what Defender for Cloud and the posture management component of it now is learning about other AI systems. And this is one of the examples that we now can integrate its AI functionality from other platforms into Defender for Cloud. I think the other one here I'm going to mention is the active user mapping. Earlier or previously with Defender for Cloud, you would have to go to another portal or to Sentinel to be able to correlate between users. So now, and that's been a gap in the Defender for Cloud portal. Now we can get the user behavior, the identity information as it relates to alerts and or incidents into the Defender for Cloud portal as well. Now, you might say, I can get this in the Defender in the Defender portal, and yes, you can. It's a different way of looking at it. Why this is important for Defender for Cloud is that Defender for Cloud is a quote-unquote mini SIEM. And if you are in an environment that has some sort of complex structure to it, you might want the local operator of that environment. So think, let's say an agency or a department have their own subscription. You can let them use Defender for Cloud and handle all their own security telemetry, including identity interactions. And so that is new, and that is a very strong new capability for Defender for Cloud.
That's a nice one, yeah. All right. So let's we've got one more poll question here. How confident are you in your ability to continuously identify misconfigurations and risks across subscriptions, resource groups, and workloads? I'm kind of curious to know what this is. Again, these answers are anonymous, so please feel free to share what you honestly think about where you're at. We have, anonymous. I would probably guess to say that no one's really very confident, but we'll see what the answers are here in a second here. So please put your results here. Again, very anonymous. We'd love to know what your results are here. And please feel free to ask some questions. We're going to get to questions right now, actually. We didn't have any questions that came in advance, which I was surprised. But we did think of some questions or have some thoughts about things that you might want to know, and some common questions about, like, for instance, we always get a question about cost, right? So how are costs dealt with as far as Defender for Cloud? Anybody, Andrew or Carson, if you want to answer that question, that'd be great for starters.
Yeah, I'll say I'll put a link here in the chat window too.
Oh, fantastic!
I mean, there are free tiers of CSPM, for example, and at least that chart will show you what do I get with a free tier. Free is always good.
Perfect.
Obviously, the non-free tier, the paid tier, you can do a lot more. But my point of that is by turning that on and leveraging the security posture management, even the free tier, then you're going to start to get the inventory of those assets. And the reason that's important is it'll start to inventory that. And then within the Defender for Cloud portal within Azure, then you can actually see what pricing can be. For example, it surfaces some Azure storage, and it's going to find here's how many instances of Azure storage, and here's how much the cost is. It would be to protect that, right? Or, I found 12 virtual machines. Here's the
Yep.
cost it would be to protect that. So it's all consumption based. This isn't, I need another E5 license or G5 license or whatever. It's all consumption based, and it really tells you right in the portal what it's going to be like on a recurring basis. Some of them get a little trickier depending on the type of protection it is, when it gets a little more transactional, but it does a really good job right in the portal if you can at least start to inventory those assets you have in there.
Thank you, Andrew. I don't know if you have anything else, Karsten, but on that same topic of cost, is this an all or nothing thing? When I turn on Defender for Cloud, is it going to protect everything that it sees, or can I limit it to just a certain scope of units to protect? Karsten or Andrew, either one.
Yeah, no, you can control that, and that is also controllable either down to the resource level or up to the subscription level. So it's configurable.
Very nice.
I typically leave it behind with a recommendation on turning it on for everything. But I do see there is sometimes something you want to stand up a POC, you don't want to explode the cost on it. So then we can certainly turn that off if that's isolated and not share common resources.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And on the whole getting started thing, how do you get started? Is there a free version? Yes, there's a 30-day free trial version if you want to get tried out with that. Another question about cost, MDE licenses, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint licenses. Do you still need to buy these if you're using Defender for Cloud?
No, you do not. So the Defender for Cloud, when I onboard servers, either in Azure or via Arc from on-prem or any other cloud, they have a pay-as-you-go cost to that server, and that includes the MDE licensing for the server. So if you previously, or if you're considering procuring licenses for servers, I would take a look at Defender for Cloud and see that can be an alternative for you.
Gotcha. All right. And we were talking about cross-signal correlation before, and this always brings back the common question about, the rule of thumb about not putting all your eggs in one basket and how people are using multiple tools. What are your thoughts about that, Karsten, as far as consolidating tools and using one solution?
Yeah, no, like many of us, I've been around in the business for a while, and I was raised with the rule of thumb: don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
And I think back in the day that made a lot of sense. There was some tools really good at antivirus, some tools really good at malware, others at vulnerabilities. Still are good tools out there. Like we're not gonna diss Tenable. But what I've come to learn, what I come to realize, that if I operate in Microsoft tenant, I have the tools I need inside the tenant with the Microsoft stack of security tools. Sure, there might be business process, or there might be functionality in legacy tools or other tools, right? Again, I'm going to mention Tenable. Tenable is fantastic at reporting. Might be a business process around that. Microsoft vulnerability scanning is more of a black and white. Here is a vulnerability. Here's the CVE. Have a nice day, right? So, but from the functionality itself, from the ability of finding vulnerabilities, I'm covered. So that's really what I'm leaning towards there. So, this was probably something that shaped up, I want to say, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where Microsoft was stepping into the right areas and getting their tools to do the required levels for business or professional customers.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing I'll add on top of that is that the more Microsoft is doing in this space from a security perspective, you see the term thrown around unified, right? Unified approach to security, and it really is super comprehensive. And so, there's a whole nother discussion that you could have around, I'm using, tool A for secret scanning and code scanning, and I'm using another tool for, whatever. But, it is really good that you can leverage a single unified tool in order to do what you need, because SOC operators have a tough job, right? Especially the more tools they have,
Yeah.
that's the
From a
more,
skilling perspective too.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's just a lot to that. So that's why, the more that, this product grows, the more important it becomes, I think, for those people.
And now we've got the tools to unify them under one piece of glass and across multiple clouds. It just makes sense, right? And with the cross signal correlations, it's a great solution. All right. I think we're done with questions unless anybody wants to come off mute, or I don't think there's any questions in the chat.
We did have
We got-
one here, someone going late asking about the copy of the deck or meeting notes.
Yeah, so Casey we usually send out a link to the recording and the PDF, I guess, of the PowerPoint slides, I believe. So you'll be getting a copy of that as long as you've been registered. Even if you didn't show up today, you should be getting a copy of those. So good question. So some results on what's your biggest challenge protecting cloud assets today? Interesting. Skills, resources, and AI-related risk protection were the two highest at 40% each, and lack of unified visibility with 20%. That was the answers there. And then looking at the other question about how confident you are about your ability to continuously identify misconfigurations, etc. Somewhat confident. That was the answer by large, 55%. And then it went down to basically we don't have a formal CSP process. So either some people were somewhat confident or they just didn't have anything yet in place. So interesting news there. All right. Just want to remind folks of all of your member benefits for You Already Own It. If you have not signed up to get the weekly or the monthly newsletter, we distribute a newsletter every month. Please do so. We've got lots of workshops, as you see on the right side here, that are one-on-one with your organization. And speaking of the workshops, as of we launched this one just recently. So if you liked what you heard today, but you still have some questions, you want some one-on-one conversation about that, or want some time, certainly sign up for this Azure Defender for Cloud briefing. Over the course of an hour, you'll have access to somebody like Karsten, maybe even Karsten, to hold this conversation with your organization and get some one-on-one time with them. Again, these are all the benefits that we have each month. There's something for everybody. Feel free to share it with the rest of the folks in your organization. If you see something here that might be of interest to somebody else, please do so. We always include some helpful links. Definitely take a look at some of these links here. These are definitely great places to get started on your journey to understanding Defender for Cloud a little bit better and get some more in-depth knowledge there. Coming up in December, we're gonna, as we do every year in December, we have the Ignite announcements. We're gonna go through a nice review of all the big announcements, lots of great things that came out of Ignite, like the security copilot thing, which we were just so ecstatic about hearing about this week, about how it's going to be included with E5, at least some capability as some credit, at least for each of your E5 customers. So lots of great news coming out of Ignite this week. We're going to go into much more details. I think it's going to be December 18th at 1 o'clock. So it's a little bit earlier again because of the holidays. So definitely make sure you mark your calendar, save the date at 1 o'clock on the 18th. Would love to hear how we did today. From a level 1 to 5. If you found this was useful, please give us a 1. If you found this not so useful, give us a 1, or if you found it very useful, give us a 5. Anything between would be helpful as well. Gonna pause here one more second for any other questions. If you have them, we'll stay on after I finish the last wrap-up slide for a few more minutes. But if there's no other questions, I just want to say, as you heard today, Microsoft Defender Cloud is more than just a security tool, right? It's a strategic enabler for organizations embracing AI and cloud and on-premise security. It's evolving AI protection capabilities, multi-cloud support, and integrated threat protection positions it as a critical asset for safeguarding digital information. As the threat landscape grows more complex, Defender for Cloud's unified, intelligent approach ensures organizations can work securely and confidently. We encourage you all to reach out to your cloud strategist, sign up for that Defender for Cloud briefing, and look towards the You Already Own It program for further guidance and support. If you want to follow up on today's session, please feel free to reach out to us anytime. We're your account executive. I want to thank you all for joining us today, especially Karsten for presenting and Angie for joining in on the conversation and helping out with the chat questions. From all of us here at Planet Technologies, we are thankful for you and we wish you a happy, safe, and healthy Thanksgiving. With that, we'll see you all next week. Thanks for joining us. We'll stay on for a few more minutes in case there's any questions.